With reports from camp that the TCU defense has been ahead of the offense, should we start being concerned about where the offense is? We'll talk about that more next on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe wherever it is you get podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. We're free and available wherever podcasts are available for you. So thanks for tuning in, whether it's watching or listening to the show today. We continue to talk about TCU football as they are 2+ weeks, I guess closer to 3 weeks, but 2.5 weeks out from playing their first game against Stanford. A lot of intrigue about this team, a lot of question marks about this team. And as I've been compiling like all the practice reports, whether it's from the guys at Horned Frog Blitz like Jeremy Clark and Jamie Plunkett or Steven Johnson at the 4 Star Telegram, one thing that I've come across, and I put this out Saturday, it feels like the defense is consistently winning these battles against the offense. Now, that doesn't mean the offense has been totally anemic or without plays. Like, they've made some plays. Cam Cook apparently had a really good day running the football in their scrimmage on Friday. Josh Hoover said after that scrimmage, he spoke with the media and said they were averaging about 7 yards a carry on Friday in that scrimmage, which is really good. That's super encouraging because I think the big question mark for this offense is the offensive line. But it's weird to me that the defense keeps winning these battles. And I said this on social media. I was like, you can spin it either way. We're at that time of year where all this information is coming out. And in most cases, with the exception of injuries, like there's really no positive way to spin losing Vernon Glover and potentially Avery Helm, 2 guys that you thought could be starting for you on the outside. You hope other players step up, but those are big losses, right? Losing Cade Bennett on the offensive line is a big loss. You hope that this works with them kind of shuffling around Colton Deary and James Brockermeyer. But that was a guy they expected to be a contributor, and now, unfortunately, because of health, he's not going to be a player this year. Or he's not going to be playing this year, I should say. But a lot of the other information that's coming out, you can sort of, if you want to put a positive view on it, you can do that. And I admittedly am someone who I would say I tend to be a realist. My wife says that's what pessimists say. I think I'm usually pretty reserved. I try to temper expectations. And even when it comes to my favorite sports team, I can be a little glass half empty, which I'm not saying everybody has to subscribe to that opinion, but that's just in a lot of camps where I fall. And so one thing that's really stood out to me as practices have progressed, both in the spring and the fall, and I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it in the spring because the starting quarterback was out, and I don't think that's the end-all be-all, but it's a huge factor, right? I'm surprised that the defense is winning more of these battles. And I say that because in a normal environment, so let's say that the variables were even, like the offense and defense were both going into their second year in a system, you would expect the defense to maybe be a little bit ahead because usually installing a defense, picking up those concepts, getting back on track, it doesn't take quite as long as the offense where you have more plays that are dealt with timing, communication, those types of things. There's plenty of communication on the defense side of the ball, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. And then also, even if you have a pretty vast and expansive playbook, the offense, I think for the most part, is trying to figure out, okay, what are the core things that we're going to run, the concepts, the formations, the plays that we're going to run during the season. Let's make sure we're repping that a lot so that we get it down and we're good at it. And inevitably, when you go good on good, the defense is going to start to get a sense of, okay, this is what they're trying to do. These are the plays they're trying to run. And I'm super excited that they're playing well under Andy Avalos. I do think that's a big factor going into this year. However, if you're going to have an offense that is going to be running at a fast tempo and trying to make big plays happen and be explosive, that means you need to score points because your defense is probably going to be on the field a lot. And so it's just odd to me that in a situation where the defense is learning a new system, learning a new scheme, that they would be winning these battles against the offense on a more consistent basis. That's just strange to me. I'm not ready to hit the panic button. I just wonder what it means for the offensive side of the ball when the season starts. Are they going to be able to function well against tough defenses? Because they didn't have any issues putting up big yards last year, but they did have trouble sustaining drives, scoring touchdowns, keeping themselves in the game and going score for score with other offenses. And as much as I would love the idea of this defense just being so good that they're playing in a lot of games where the score is like 24-17, 26-23, and there's that element to it. But honestly, I don't think that's the case. One, because I feel like once the game starts, there's going to be some growing pains that the defense is going to have to go through as they get accustomed to running this new system in live environments where things are changing and offenses are trying to scheme to beat them. But then also, if you look at Sonny Dykes' career, his teams have never been led by their defense. I mean, unless I'm missing something, but like looking at SMU, I think those teams got to a place where they were pretty physical. They were physical enough, and they could be kind of tough-minded and win some big games. But it was still about Tanner Mordecai or Shane Buechele and those skill players and getting it done on the offensive side of the ball. His first year at TCU. Defense stepped up when they had to, but it was led by Max Duggan and Quentin Johnston and Kendre Miller, Amari DiMercado, Savion Williams. Like, those were the guys that were making the big plays and leading the squad each and every week. So I just don't really see a team that's suddenly going to become a group where the defense is their identity. I mean, I'm open to it, but I don't see that happening. Now, I will say, Kendall Briles, when he did his media conference, he was like, look, he's not approaching camp as I'm trying to beat Andy Avalos. He is not trying to scheme to defeat the TCU defense. And he also said, like, at this point, they haven't even started getting into Stanford prep yet. I think they're really still trying to make sure they have all their basic concepts down, and that a lot of the things that they're going to depend on each and every week, they understand what they have to do and how they have to execute it to play at a high level. So it seems like Andy is just naturally a very aggressive play caller. I think he's trying to sort of throw the kitchen sink out there, and not to embarrass the offense, but to make sure his defense is ready. And he said the other day they're 95% installed, but they're trying to get every concept they can out in real time so that when the season starts, the defense feels confident in what they're doing. And then with that happening, hopefully a byproduct of it is that they're helping the offense out, because the O-line is seeing a lot of different, blitz packages, rushers, guys coming at them. The receivers are seeing different coverages along with the quarterback. And that's going to be beneficial for the offense, because when they see more complicated, more diverse defenses through the season, they have a vision and an idea of, oh, hey, this is what, we saw in practice, and we at least have a baseline and a feel for how to attack this. Another key here, and when I talked earlier about, the positives about this, if this team can run the ball effectively, that's going to make a huge difference. I mean, that's just sort of football 101. It's not necessarily specific to TCU, but Amani Bailey had a productive year last year. I don't feel like the running game was consistent. A couple years back, they really leaned on Kendre Miller and Amari DiMercado in that run game when they needed to slow things down, and it got a little dicey, even when they were behind in games. You think about the K-State game or the Oklahoma State game where they got way behind. They were still just kind of running their natural offense, keeping the ball on the ground, allowing themselves to churn out yards and do that at a high level. And so Cam Cook is going to be a big key of what they're doing. And all the reports are, And I don't think this is just people blowing smoke. I know we're in talking season, right? Where the results haven't happened yet. So you can sort of say all the positive things you want. But both players and coaches it seems like they've gone out of their way to say, listen, this guy's a dude. Like he's a player. He knows what he's doing. He's explosive. He's going to be a factor this year. And you don't need to worry about that position on the offense because he's got it covered. And he's going to be really dynamic for this football team. So that's super encouraging as well. And I'm excited to see what he ends up doing this upcoming season. But as far as what gives me pause, I think it's odd that they're not in a place where it's crisper. And maybe that's just simply because Josh wasn't there for the spring. And so in the passing game, they're still figuring some things out. They've had to shuffle around some pieces on the O-line, and they're still getting all their personnel groupings right. But you need to figure it out in the next few weeks, because I do feel like when the games start, especially, the offense, at least early in the season, is going to have to lead and be the strength of the team while the defense kind of gets their bearings and figures things out and gets to a place where they can be more productive and explosive and create more negative plays later in the year. And the defense is also going to have some big tests against teams like SMU, which has great skill players. And I think Stanford as well, because what Stanford's going to do is they're going to come right at you. And that can be a tough thing. Like if a team can run the football downhill and you don't have an answer for it, then that's something that you can't really scheme against. You can't really hide. You just have to find a way to stop it. So that's another aspect of this that will be fascinating through the first few weeks, is how do they respond to, the real game where offenses are kind of changing things up, running different formations, personnel groupings, and trying to attack this defense, as opposed to, right now the offenses get their own selves right and rep things and get to a place where they feel comfortable going into the year. When we come back, somebody had a good question about what my gut tells me about this football team, so I'll dive into that a little bit more here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I do want to take a moment to talk about eBay Motors. eBay Motors, millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. Passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. 122 million parts for your ride. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So Vince Pryor, who is very active in the YouTube chat or the YouTube comment section, appreciate him chiming in on the show from time to time. He had some thoughts about this team, but then he also wondered what my gut kind of tells me about this group as we get closer to approaching the season. And I don't know if I've given a season prediction. I think I did at some point, maybe when I broke down the schedule a few months back. Right now, I'm leaning towards 8-4. I don't think that gets you in Arlington, obviously. So that'd be a bowl game and kind of a middle of the pack team in the Big 12. And while that's not going to, get a lot of banners hung around the stadium or maybe get people excited, I do feel like that would be a step forward for this program and a good bounce back after last year. Here's kind of where I'm at with it. I think from a mentality standpoint, I feel like they're in a better place. And in my mind, it's not just because of Josh Hoover, but I think Josh is a good leader. A lot of the intangible things that he brings to the table are going to be a positive, and it seems like the team just responds well to him and has rallied behind him, and they're excited that he's the dude leading the charge. I just also believe the coaching staff can't have a lack of urgency again. If they do, then we got real big problems, and honestly, we're probably talking about maybe moving on after the season, because Sonny's admitted, like last year's group, the leadership just wasn't there. And I don't think it was just one person. I feel like overall, for whatever reason, that team just kind of felt like they had made it and they didn't have to put in the same amount of work that they did the year before. And I'm not saying everybody did. I think there were players on that team that understood what it took to get to the top of the mountain and wanted to replicate what they had done in 2022, but maybe they just weren't vocal enough, or they didn't have enough of a voice with the rest of the roster. Whatever the case is, I think ultimately it falls on the coaches. Now, they didn't make – I guess they made a major change. They changed coordinators on defense. The rest of the staff has pretty much stayed the same. Brought in Jimmy Smith from Arkansas, Ken Wilson as the linebackers coach, comes over from Nevada. Of course, Andy Avalos as the DC. A couple consultants like Dana Holgerson, Todd Graham. Those guys I don't think will be super involved in what I'm talking about right now, but they are part of the coaching staff. The returning coaches should have a huge sense of urgency because it's a big year for this team. And one thing that I'm really looking for with Sonny Dykes in this group, something that I was concerned about when he took the job. I never really considered his teams at SMU to be known for their physical and mental toughness. That was not something that I associated with Coach Dykes. I was really pleasantly surprised to see in his first season at TCU, that team had that in spades. I mean, they did not get knocked down until the national title game, but they kept fighting. They kept scratching and clawing. And they also had a lot of talent. But the mental aspect of the game, they understood what it took to win, and they just kept showing up and answering the bell. And they also stayed really healthy and took a lot of hits and took a lot of scrapes and bruises and stayed in the game. Last season, I would not consider that team one that was mentally tough, or I guess had the mentality it took to win at a high level. So this year, even if it doesn't mean, and I'm not saying it means they got to go win a Big 12 title, but I just want to see more of that competitive fire and spirit across the board. Because there were some close games last season. I mean, if they beat Colorado and if they find a way to win that West Virginia game, which I think were two very winnable football games, then the team's 7-5, and maybe we're having a completely different discussion, but they didn't. So, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I think this is going to be a big year as far as, okay, is this something that Sonny can establish, or was 2022 a perfect storm of really talented older guys who had not had success, who responded to a different voice and just kind of understood internally what it took as a team to band together and to get it done. And they didn't have to be, motivated constantly by the coaching staff. But overall, I'm excited about this group and just their hunger and desire to win. I think that's going to be there. The things that I'm concerned about that I've talked about before is I just think at key positions on the team, there's too many question marks. The O-line, I hope it works, but I feel like even in an ideal world, it's going to take some time for all those guys to come together and be really good. And it's tough to win if you can't block people up front. It's going to be tough to beat the best teams on your schedule if you're questionable at that position. I think Josh is going to be really good. This will also just be his first full year starting since he got half the season last year. And so I think there's still going to be some mistakes and some things that he can improve on going into 2025. Ultimately, I think they are building towards next season being a year where they're a real deal contender again. But I feel like they're going to take a step forward this season. But I would love to be wrong. I would love to come back here in a few months and have egg on my face and say that, they just blew all these expectations out of the water. And I think in the Big 12, there's a chance for them, if they do come together more quickly than I expect to win a lot of games and be a factor in the discussion at the end of the season. But that's sort of where I am right now with my expectations. I'd love to hear, though, what you guys think, record prediction, what you would see as progress, what you're looking for other than just a win-loss record for progress for TCU in this upcoming season. We'll wrap things up when we come back here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel, perfect time to join FanDuel. You love sports. That's why you're listening to this podcast. You're probably also really into the NFL, Major League Baseball, everything else going on. It's still kind of a dead time for sports, but it's not going to last much longer because things are going to be ramping up for the fall. But right now, while it's still summer, you should take advantage of FanDuel because at FanDuel.com, or if you download the FanDuel app, they're giving customers boost and bonuses every day. Every day, boost and or bonuses for their customers. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Download it today. FanDuel, official betting partner of Major League Baseball, and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. They make it super simple for you. Check out FanDuel. Do it now. So on Friday's show, I talked about Kendall Briles, mentioning Cam Cook. He's a guy. They're excited for what he can do in the run game this year, and also just some of his thoughts about where the offense was. Tanner McKinney said, "See, I told you Cam Cook will be a big player when he gets his chance. He's a good runner, great speed, has great hands. I'm hoping the line does much better this season to help with the run and pass game." Yes, Tanner McKinney has been on Cam Cook Island for a long time, and I appreciate your consistency, man. If he has a big season, you can be the first to talk about how you called it, because you did. Even going back to last year, Tanner thought Cam should have gotten more opportunities in the running game, and he's going to get a lot of those opportunities this year. I think they're going to try to feed him the rock and make this team physical at the point of attack again. That's going to be a huge part of what they want to do this year. Matthew Welker says, if Cam has a great season, it'll be the only time I won't hate hearing the phrase, let him cook. I see that. Yeah, last name makes a lot of sense. I'm sure we'll get all kinds of weird gifs and memes and fun things if Cam Cook has a big year, and hopefully that's the case. I feel like he's poised to do it, but, of course, a big part of the run game is going to be how physical they are up front, and then, we talk about running to set the pass, but also if you have a threat in the vertical pass game, that can make running the ball a lot easier. I think a couple of years ago, that team was so effective through the air that it allowed Kendre and Amari to run against some light boxes and have some favorable matchups. Cole Rogers says the skill positions in quarterback room have talent and depth. Success of the offense will boil down to line play. He thinks the talent's there to be a top 6 line in the Big 12, but a lot of unknowns. They need to settle on the starters and get them to gel. Depth in the line is talented but young. Need to get young guys some playing time when the games allow to. Yeah, they're trying to build depth with the recruiting classes they've had the last few years. So I think one interesting thing about that, there's with the non-conference games, hopefully you get a big lead on Stanford. I don't think that's guaranteed. SMU is probably going to be a dogfight. So really Long Island is the only game where you feel like maybe you get an extended look at the twos, but maybe there'll be, a couple breakthroughs here and there where you can do that as well. But there's a lot of young guys on this line that, yes, you're going to have to get better and get better soon so they have more depth. Doug said he really enjoyed seeing all the coaches this week. He thinks they're putting something great together. Sonny has a plan. He likes Cam Cook. TCU needs to have a massive year, needs him to have a massive year to have a winning season. It was fun hearing all the coaches talk. Todd Graham spoke as well. I didn't break down his media session and do a show about it or segment on it, but a lot of cool personalities there and a lot of great input from those coaches, and hopefully they can give some great feedback to Sonny this upcoming season. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for joining us here on another week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.